Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people looking to live life at their peak potential, chock full of real-world tools and knowledge that you can apply in your life today. By providing you with a lens into the lives, beliefs, practices, and actions of those who are already living extraordinary lives, the Performance Enhancing Podcast will help you shift your mindset or create that change in your daily rituals and habits so you can explode with success in the areas of life that are most important to you. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with SatoriPrime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Performance Enhancing Podcast with your host, Ilan Ferdman. So I'm going to do something that I've actually never done before in this podcast interview. So my guest is Ades. And here's basically what happened. We got on the phone and started talking, and it turned out that both of us had just come back from funerals in the couple of days prior. And that steamrolled into incredible conversation about Judaism, religion, us growing up inside of those, being in relationships with people who are more religious. That then steamrolled into how to deal with my kids and my in-laws and my brother-in-law who's more religious, how I am around religion. I honestly didn't know if we were going to share this or not as we were recording it. It was literally like a pre-interview thing. And at the end of it, when we actually said, okay, let's start the recording of the podcast interview, both of us kind of looked, and Kim actually said, oh man, I wish we would have recorded that, to which I replied, we actually did. So I was trying to figure out how to edit this, because some of it is really raw and some of it might upset certain listeners. You know, there's some phraseology that I say about religion, for example, that I hate religion, but you may have heard me say that before. And Kim shared some very personal stuff about her kids. And I just thought, you know what? I'm going to leave this as is. And I'm going to let you guys in behind the scenes of a very, when I say raw, put it this way, Kim didn't know we were recording and I had no intention of using it. So we were saying things that if it was interview style, I think we wouldn't have said. And I was thinking to filter it, and then I thought, you know what, screw it. So I'm just going to give it to you raw. But before I do, here's what I want to do. So part one, I'm actually going to play you part two of the interview recording process, because I want you to understand who Kim is and what she is about before you understand and hear the conversation we had pre-interview. So it's kind of like a reverse interview, if you will. In this interview, we're going to talk about Kim's true passion and her work, which is high-level executive coaching. And she does something very interesting because she coaches people around journaling. And you'll notice a few times in the conversation, I will say something and Kim jumps right on it to correct me. So a couple of things that we talk about is, one, creating emotional resilience, which is a very powerful thing about getting knocked down and actually getting up. So looking at your negative experiences and blooming from them rather than cowering from them. And then you've probably heard me say this line of entrepreneurs need to jump on off a cliff and figure out how to fly on the way down. And that's one of those things that Kim literally jumped on and rephrased in such a beautiful way that I really want you guys to hear. And then what would happen if you could change course in your life? I know for some of us that's terrifying, right? The unknown. We have a massive conversation around that. So that's part one that I'm going to play for you now. She's actually going to answer the final question in this part. And it'll seem like this is the wrap up of the interview. But in part two, I'm going to share with you this super raw pre-interview style in its unedited form. So I hope you enjoy it. I don't know. This is maybe an experiment, and maybe this will completely blow up in our face. But I just think both of us are people that have a great amount of integrity, a great amount of self-belief in ourselves, in our abilities. And both of us just said, you know what, play it as is. So I hope you really, really enjoy part one. And please, please, please make sure to come and check out part two. Hands down, the most raw, unedited podcast you will probably ever hear me do. So I hope you enjoy my two-part inside out interview with Kim Ades. I'm here today with Kim Ades, and we've had some really interesting conversations before we got on here, which maybe we'll share with you a little bit later. But Kim, before we dive in, tell people a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of this.
Perfect. So I own a coaching company called Frame of Mind Coaching. I have a team of 18 coaches, and we work with senior executives, entrepreneurs, innovators, game changers, and we really look at how their thinking impacts their results. We do a very deep dive over an intense 10-week period where we are in contact with our clients every single day through the process of journaling to really look at how their thinking, their beliefs, their perspectives, their past experiences all come together to really create the results they're getting. So that's what I do. That's who I am.
Awesome. How did you become this, person that can coach people and take them through this process, just so people get a little bit of background?
Well, I'll tell you, at years and years and years ago, I owned a software company, and we used to build simulation-based assessments. And those assessments were designed to help companies make the best hiring decisions they could. And we tested hundreds of thousands of people. And one of the things we discovered was that it didn't matter what job people were in, it didn't matter what industry they were in or what career they were going for. There was one key differentiator between top performers and other people, and that was their degree of emotional resilience. So people who had a higher degree of emotional resilience were more likely to succeed no matter what they were doing in comparison to other people. And so that led me into starting to coach people, and rather than managing their behaviors and activities and watching what they do and creating plans and holding them accountable, I decided to build a company that focused exclusively on helping people build their emotional resilience. So that's where we are, and been doing it for 10 years and love every minute of it.
That's so funny. From software to the power of the mind. Talk to people about emotional resilience, because I think it's a term that some people are going to be completely unaware of.
So emotional resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity with speed and agility. But it's even a little bit more than that. It's the ability to take your adversity and leverage it, do something with it, turn it into something good. And so we all get kicked. We all have bad times. We all have things that happen to us that aren't ideal. And the question is, how do we respond to that? How do we take it and learn from it? And how do we take it and really package it in such a way where we are doing something that moves us forward in our lives? So that's what we're looking at. What we find is a lot of people who get kicked stay down a long time. Oh, yeah. And they carry that experience through their lives with resentment, hostility, fear, etc. And what we want to do is we want to help people transform negative experiences into really, really positive experience and learn to bloom as a result of those experiences rather than shrink.
Yeah, and do it quickly.
Do it quickly. Speed is important.
Yeah. It's interesting. We did this podcast with another woman a little while back, and we started this happy corner with her. And she had this great line about a monk who people would come up to and say, you're never out of balance. How do you do that? And he goes, it's not that I'm never out of balance. I fall out of balance all the time. I just recover so quickly that to you, it looks like I'm in balance all the time.
Right.
And I think that's ultimately what you're training these people to be able to do, get in balance right away. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and I mean, that's a really great example, but the philosophy behind that is the way you feel is a function of the way you think. And so there are lots of things we don't have control over, but we do have control over our thinking and our feeling. And if we just kind of completely take control over that, then recovery is far, far faster than you could ever imagine.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've coached people also for a long time, and there are people, like you said, that when they get kicked, decades. I mean, literally decades of resentment and horrible thought patterns that are just holding them down, and they are completely oblivious that it's X thought pattern holding them down.
Yeah. And people fall into a state of feeling like a victim, whether it's conscious or not. They just feel bad for themselves. And it's when you feel bad for yourself, it's really hard to get to a better place. And sometimes you just need a hand up.
Yeah. So let's use an example, because I think for a lot of our listeners, or at least people that have been emailing me, this is definitely an area where they struggle, which is, I call it that entrepreneurial leap, right? Like that having to leap. If you want to become an entrepreneur, at some point you just have to leap off the cliff and figure out how to fly somewhere on the way down. But for a lot of people, and I do believe this comes from, certain thought patterns or life experiences, et cetera, they walk to that cliff and they look down and they go, no, that is so scary. I can't do that.
So let's start with this. Okay, so you just explained why people are scared, because it's a cliff that people have to leap off.
Yep.
What if it wasn't a cliff? And what if they didn't have to leap? And what if they didn't have to experience the possibility of explosion midair, right? What if the experience could be different? And so why am I saying that? Is that if I thought that I had to jump off a cliff literally, I wouldn't want to do it either. It would be far too scary. I would feel paralyzed. However, what you just did was created a framework that depicts entrepreneurs that doesn't have to be that way. So it's a belief that being an entrepreneur is exactly like jumping off a cliff and not knowing where you're going to land. Okay, so that's a belief.
True.
And that belief creates paralysis. The truth of the matter is that what creates fear is the idea of going into the unknown, the idea of having something stable and secure and a solid form of income, and then going into a black hole where we don't really know what's going to happen. Well, what if we can create the concept of transition? What if we can create a system for any entrepreneur that says, okay, you're here, you have a solid experience, or you have a solid flow of income. Let's create a strategic transitional plan that allows you to slowly diminish what you're doing here and gradually increase what you're doing here so that it doesn't feel like jumping off a cliff.
Yeah.
But we imagine our beliefs are structured that it's an all or nothing situation. And that doesn't have to be the case. It's something we invented. It's something that entrepreneurs walk around like they have a little red cape that says, I'm an entrepreneur, I took the lead, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. And we can help entrepreneurs migrate safely from one land to another. There's no reason why not. We've gone around, pounding our chest saying, ha, 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 I'm an entrepreneur and you got to do it this way. And it doesn't have to be the case.
So for those listening who are kind of on the fence and looking from the outside going, oh, that'd be such a good idea. But I just don't know. I like that we kind of reframe this. Now, what do you look at when you're coaching these people? Are you listening to what comes out of their mouth? Very similar to what I just said, right? And that created a whole world for you and you kind of guided me a different direction. Is that the practice that you guys are taking? How do you guys find where they're stopped?
Okay, so when we coach people, we have a call with them once a week for 10 weeks. Every single call is recorded. And so if I recorded this call right here and had you listen to it, you go, wow. And this concept of transition would be cemented in your brain because you would hear yourself. But over and above that, when we coach you, you would be journaling in an online journal every single day for the duration of the coaching period with your coach. So I would ask you a question, you would journal out the answer, and I would read it and then respond. And there's this dialogue happening in between. So can you imagine how much data I'm collecting about the way you think and the way you come to the table and the language you use and everything else? So I would be hitting a home run every single call to say, hey, look at the way you're looking at what's ahead of you and look at the things that are creating paralysis for you. Let's shift it just a little bit and open up the possibilities, open up the ideas that are possible for you, and remove the fear, remove the resentment, remove the barriers that are getting in your way.
Yeah, it's interesting. You just remind me of a distinction I learned a long time ago called seeming, where we go through life with a sentence like, it seems like life is X, or it seems like I am this or that. And we buy into those so hard that when you journal, really what you're sharing is your seemings. Like, this is just how life is, or this is just blah, blah. As a coach, you clearly know that that's not the way necessarily life is. It just is that way for that person. So you're having them almost coach themselves or see themselves from outside of themselves and look at it from a very subjective perspective.
Objective perspective.
Objective, sorry,
yeah. So we're doing a few things. We're teaching them to observe their thinking. We're teaching them to look at their thinking and decide whether or not their thoughts propel them forward or hold them back. There's no in between.
Yeah.
Right. So we're teaching them to take ownership of their thinking and become observers of their thinking and decide whether or not the thinking they have makes them feel good or makes them feel horrible. So when we seem to think that the world is, designed only for the rich, is that a good feeling thought or is that a bad feeling thought? And is it even really true? So we teach people to challenge their thinking, challenge their beliefs, and consciously make choices about their thinking that aligns with their desires. So if I were to think, the world is designed for the rich, that doesn't necessarily align with my goals or my desires. That doesn't help me move forward in any shape or way. And so I got to figure out a way to transform that thought. It's really not serving me.
Are the questions you ask your coach or your clients, are they custom made? Is there some sort of format that you guys go through?
So on a weekly basis, they get a journaling prompt or a question. And every week it's pretty much the same for every client. But the minute they answer it, there's nothing that's formulaic. It's all a completely unique and customized experience, because the way you answer a question gets sent to the coach, and the coach now digs down into your thinking, your experiences, your life, your relationships. And it's a very applicable and just-in-time kind of coaching. If you look at Olympic athletes as an example, right? What's the relationship they have with their coach? It's really super intimate. You spend every minute of your life with your coach when you're an Olympic athlete. Your coach knows every little subtlety and innuendo about you. Well, does that exist in the personal, professional, business world? It doesn't, but we make it so by really looking at your thinking every single day. So we ask our clients to journal. They're journaling every day, no days off, no weekends, no vacations. This is an intense journey. And the purpose is to move a great distance over a very short period of time.
Is that why people choose to work with you? Do they find themselves, I guess there's two things here. Do they find themselves like they're kind of stuck or in a transition or something's not working? Or are these people that are just thinking, you know what, I'm a high performer. I know that there's no limit to how much I can perform. I just want to perform better. And I don't know what's holding me back. So I want to take this exercise and see what that is.
So I get both. I get people who are in a certain situation or life challenge, right? It could be they've been working for the same company for 25 years and they're ready for a change, or they're thinking of starting a business, or they're not happy in their marriage, or they're struggling with their kids, or they're having conflict with their partner in their business, or they're not maximizing their team and the profits aren't where they want them to be, or they have, an older parent or somebody in their lives that's near death or very, very ill. It could be anything, any life experience that they're going through. And at the same time, the bulk of the people that I coach are people who are highly, highly driven and committed to living an extraordinary life. Yeah. So it's those people who are prepared to say, fine, I'm at the center of my world and I'm responsible for everything I'm creating, both positive and negative. And there are some things I'd like to be creating that I haven't yet created or that I'm struggling to create. I'm going to work with a coach to help me get past whatever roadblocks I'm experiencing.
Yeah. I mean, because to sign up for a 10-week, full intensive, you have to have a certain mindset. It's not like, kind of want to see. It's not like I'm going to dip my toe in the water. You're like diving on in there.
That's right. It's really for people who say, I'm here on this earth, in this world, and I really want to make the most out of it. I want to live up to my potential. I don't want to be scared by the things that scare me. I just really, really want my life to be amazing. And those are the people we coach.
Yeah. Takes a very unique person for that. I'm sure you coach some pretty amazing people.
I coach some amazing people, but those are the people I want to hang out with. Those are the people I want to spend my time with.
Yeah. Now, as a coach, and I want to just kind of bring this out to the open, I think the greatest gift is those clients tend to be our greatest teachers, our greatest mirrors. It's
100%.
You're always like, wherever you are in your life, you're like, oh my God, that's exactly what I should be doing. So can you just share something maybe that's happened recent where you just had this massive aha thing in actually coaching someone else?
Right now, my newest, I coach a whole bunch of people, but my most recently new client, he has stage 4 cancer, and he has been diagnosed to have 2 years to live. And he's 33, brilliant young guy, runs a successful company that does valuations and fundraising for companies. So there is no question that I am the one who's privileged in this situation, that I get to ride this period of time with him. And the purpose of the coaching is to infuse whatever time he has left with as much life as he can wrap his hands around. And so what the impact on me is, and I'll give you part of the conversation. When he came in, so he works super hard, like he keeps long hours, he's getting his treatments at the hospital. There's just a lot going on, and he's taking on many, many projects. And very often he works late into the night, and he says, I'm living as though I have 1 year left to live. And I said, no, you're not. It's like, what do you mean? I said, if you were living as though you only had 1 year left to live, you'd eliminate half of what you're doing. Because you'd simply say, that's not important. I don't want to do that. Let somebody else do that. This is not how I want to spend my time or my life. No, thank you. You'd be really, really scrupulous about how you're spending your time. Well, guess what? Who needed to hear that message? Right? That was me. It was me coaching me through this man. And so, he's starting to eliminate things. And as he's starting to eliminate things, I'm looking at my, professional life and going, what can I eliminate? How do I want to spend my time? How do I want to feel every day? And so the lessons are unbelievable. Every time you coach someone, you are the teacher and the student all together in one moment. Yeah.
And they always find you exactly when you need to be getting that coaching. It's just unreal. We used to have programs that we would do for like 90 days, 120 days at a time. And I remember I'd coach like 5, 6, 8 people at a time. And every single one was just a different mirror at a different section. So one was like a relationship, one was a relationship with my mom, one was with my business partner. And I was like, you moron. Why don't I was like write down the coaching. I was like, this is really good coaching. So let's talk a little bit more about, let's go back to kind of this entrepreneur starting, et cetera. What do you see in coaching all these people that is, at least let's give people something that they can look at, right? So there's patterns that most human beings have. Are there 2 or 3 things that you can share that people can just get some awareness into what might be stopping them from taking that next step?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I've been working with one of my clients for well over 5 years, and she's ready to start her own business now. And I can see exactly where she gets paralyzed. And so she has these amazing ideas. She's an incredibly strategic thinker. She's achieved massive success in her career. And now she's stuck because she can't put her thoughts down on paper. Right? She can't sit down and physically write the business plan. And so we have an idea, especially as entrepreneurs, that we've got to be good at absolutely everything. Part of the conversation I had with her was, who can you work with? Who can you find to be your scribe to capture your thoughts? Who says you have to do it all? And so that's part of our thinking. We think of, oh my God, I can't do accounting. I don't know how I'm going to do my books. That's not for me. There's no way I could be in business. I'm terrible at administration. I don't know how to sell. Whatever it is, we imagine that we have to take it on and that there are no other resources out there that could help us with the critical pieces that we need to address. So that's a huge barrier in and of itself. The other thing is, and I talk again about resources, is we believe that there aren't enough resources, that we don't have access to them, that there's a limit or a cap on what's possible for us. And the truth is, if you look around, the resources available to us are unlimited if we know how to align with those resources and tap into them. Our belief that it's not possible, that there's not enough money, there's not enough hours, there's not enough people, there's not enough help, there's not enough support, whatever, that belief severely chokes off the resources that come our way. So those are two things that I see all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with the second one more. I think that's just a conversation that human beings have. It's that scarcity mindset. It just shows up a lot when you're about to go into a solo venture.
Right.
Because it smacks you in the face. You know, as an employee, they have the same thoughts, right? Like their paycheck's not enough. They don't have enough this. They don't have enough that. It's just a plague across humanity. But I think as an entrepreneur, it really is a huge debilitator. I think it was Wayne Dyer that I heard this story from, where he's like, do you think a deer walks into the forest and goes, oh my God, I hope there's going to be enough grass here for me to eat today? Or I hope there's going to be enough air and oxygen for me to breathe. Like, just not. There's abundance for everyone and everything. And if you just have that world about you when it comes to money and time and your relationships, it's the same thing. It's all accessible. It's just what you say about it.
Exactly.
I want to talk about, you just brought it up, and I want to just talk about a little bit about your network and the power of a network. And I don't think we've ever spoken about this on the podcast really, but recently I've just come to terms with, and I've started sharing this with my friends, that everything is available to you inside of your network. We don't ask, we don't come up with a good enough, like your client, where if you don't have it written down and you don't know what you want, then you can't even go out there and ask. Can you share anything about your experience, about people connecting and just knowing and how to reach out and how to ask for help and things of that? I'm sure you coach people around that too.
Yeah. So you're exactly right about one thing, is sometimes we're not clear about what we want, right? So we think we want one thing, and that thing comes our way and we go, oh my God, that's not exactly what I had in mind.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, then I don't want that at all. And they scratch it off the list. And so part of the asking component is really starting to hone in on what you want and do that with great clarity. And so journaling allows us to become very, very clear about what we want. I mean, my daughter the other day said, I want friends that I can talk to. Now, all of a sudden, all her friends are coming to her with all their problems. She's like, Mom, I don't know what to say. I said, you wanted people to talk to you. Like, figure out exactly what you want here, hone in on it, and really define it. And, for me too, I used to say, when I was getting ready for looking for my next relationship, I said, I want a guy who's kind, who's nice, who's family oriented. I wrote the whole list, and I kept saying, and I don't want him to be short. Well, guess what? I didn't exactly marry a tall guy. But all I'm saying is that being crystal clear about what you want is super important. Over and above that, when you look at your network, the idea of asking for help is so hard for people to do. Yeah. They're stifled. It's hard for people to ask for what they want. And there are many, many reasons for it. Well, it's rude. It's not polite. It's imposing. Do I really deserve that? All of that. So again, I'll give you an example. I was working with a woman who was the executive vice president of a major retail brand in New York. Very successful. And she stepped in as acting president in the absence of the actual president. Wow. In her term, while she was there, she hit record returns, record ROI, record profitability. And she expected that they would naturally give her the role of president. When I met her, what actually happened was they were looking outside of the company for someone to take over the role. And she was devastated, literally after 25 years being with the company. And one of the, after I heard her plight and her upset and, who she was and what was going on for her, I asked her one question. I said, did you ask for the job? She said, no.
Huh.
Right. And so why didn't she ask for the job? Because she thought her hard work would get noticed and recognized, that she thought it was an obvious next step for her to get that position, that it wasn't gracious to ask, etc. And so what we find is that anything is accessible to us if we're clear about what we want and we're clearly communicating what we want without feeling like inside of us that perhaps we don't quite deserve it.
Yeah. I just want to add one other thing to that. A lot of people think they know what they want and they'll go out and share and ask for it. But because they're so uncertain, like they haven't come to that this is it, this is what I want, then everyone around them doesn't hear it as this real want or a real request. It's almost like they almost sound like they're still trying to figure it out, and then no one takes them seriously.
That's right. That's right. And it's not only the wishy-washiness component, I find, it's the, how many times have you heard someone say, yeah, well, like I want $1 million doesn't mean I'm ever going to get it. Yeah. So it's the belief that it's not possible that really prevents people from reaching their goals. If you don't believe it's going to happen, if you don't believe it's possible, you're right. It's not going to happen.
It just reminded me of a story. I was supposed to go to law school. Like ever since I was 12, I just knew I was going to be an attorney. And I did my first personal development course when I was 21. I just graduated college. And I remember thinking, wow, what am I doing? Like, I don't want to be an attorney. But since I said it at 12 and everyone's like, oh my God, you'd be such a great attorney, I just kind of bought into it. But as I grew up, I just, at that moment I questioned, well, that's not what I want. That's like what everyone around me told me I should want. And so I go, oh shit, now I have to go to my parents. I just took the LSATs. I just sent thousands of dollars worth of applications, and I have to go to my parents and tell them, Russian Jewish parents, by the way, and tell them that their dream of having an attorney son is gone. And it was so scary. And I walked in there and I said, look, we have to have this conversation, I'm not going to be an attorney. And they were like, I'm not going to go to law school. They're like, okay. And I'm like, okay, what? They're like, okay. And it was the first time I realized that I had made an adult choice in my entire life.
Well, and here's the thing, right? Like in a way you made your bed and you felt like you had to lie in it for a while.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I told everybody I was going to be a lawyer. I kind of put a stake in the ground, and that's what's expected of me. How do I undo that? Mm-hmm. It's like so many people who are in terrible relationships, but they're engaged and they're planning the wedding and they're coming close to the event and they don't know how to undo it or back out of it because they feel it's too late. They made their bed and they feel like they just have to lie in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend? Because that's a really good point. I think a lot of people have that. A lot of things, relationships, jobs, diets. I mean, like a slew of things. What would you tell someone when they feel like they're at that point to maybe transition and get out of it?
Well, one of the things that we have to do is understand where their thinking comes from, right? So who said that you have to follow this path? Who's expecting it of you? Yeah. What would happen if you changed your mind? What would the outcome be? And really work through their thinking and their expectations of a disastrous outcome if they do change their course. Right? So we're exploring all the avenues. With each person, there's a different set of expectations that they imagine for themselves and a different set of horrendous outcomes if they don't follow that prescribed path. And so what we're looking at is, what do you believe will happen if you change your course? Right? So what do you believe will happen if you decide to start a business? What are the most horrible, awful things that could happen? What we found actually is that with super top performers, entrepreneurs, executives, etc., they're not blind risk takers. They're calculated risk takers. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that they never imagine failure. It means that they imagine failure, say, okay, if I failed, here's how I would handle it, right? They walk through it. They see themselves managing the failure. And then they say, okay, I can see myself being okay if I failed, then I'll go ahead. If I can't imagine myself being okay, I'm not going to move ahead. Right? And so that is, in a sense, controlled risk.
Yeah. Very, very clever. All right, Kim, so we've come to the end of the interview, and I always ask this last question, so I'm sure yours will be very insightful here. But that cliche of, if I only knew then what I know now, and you've had, multiple businesses and multiple experiences, but what's something that you wish you would have known when you were younger or when you were starting business that you would have gone back and told yourself?
For me, the big lesson is that I'm responsible for every single thing I touch, see, smell, hear in my life. And nobody else is responsible for that. I can't point my finger at anyone else, not my ex-husband, my parents, or anybody. I'm responsible for the way my life turns out, no matter what happens to me. And so had I known that back then, I don't know, things may have looked differently. I have no regrets, but certainly I would have spent a lot more happy hours. And at the end of the day, really, the way you think will determine what you can achieve. And so if you're not achieving the results you want to be achieving, it's 100% related to the way you're thinking, and that's where the shift has to occur before anything else can change.
Interesting. So I know we were talking about kids before. How are you injecting that? Because that seems like a very powerful lesson that you wish you would have known. How are you injecting that in your kids' lives?
Every day, all the time, through osmosis. They learn. They learn through experience and by example and by discussion. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. When my son was younger, he hated conflict. And so rather than deal with conflict, he'd brood and be upset and hide and withdraw and kind of sit in his room and not interact with anybody and kind of be pissed off at the world. And
very familiar to me.
Right. And so, the conversation was, look, if you don't like something, you've got to address it. You've got to have conversation. You've got to be able to communicate. Well, now he has a girlfriend. They got into a little fight and she withdrew for a few days. Oh man, was he not happy? And when they reconnected and got back together, and he said, look, if there's something you're not happy about, you've got to be able to talk about it. Because if you're not going to communicate with me, it's not going to work. And I'm like, is this the same kid? How did that just happen?
Amazing. Right? Really well done. Really well said.
So, they do learn, and the way you show up as a parent will fundamentally and profoundly get transmitted to your kids. So watch what you're doing in this relationship. Its impact is unparalleled.
Yeah, they will do what you do, not what you say. That I've learned even with a 3.5 and 2-year-old. So I'm assuming as they get older, it's even smarter.
That's right.
All right, Kim. So look, I'm sure we went all over the map today, and I'm sure people are going to be like here and want to talk to you, or there and want to talk to you. Where can they find out more about you, about your business?
So it's frameofmindcoaching.com. There's a ton of information there. But the most important thing is I encourage everybody to sign up for an assessment. And it's not a normal assessment, and it's a little unusual because we invite you to journal right there in the assessment, and that assessment will go to a coach where you will literally get a coaching call based on your journal. So you'll experience exactly what we do with our clients right off the bat. And I've seen it so many times that one initial conversation completely can transform somebody's life.
Yeah, it's one you're one thought broken down away from having the life of your dreams. That's for
it's
sure.
Crazy. Yeah. So go to the site and try it out. And of course, it's complimentary. No strings attached, no cost attached. Try it out. It'll rock your world. Absolutely.
Awesome. Kim, by the way, guys, the link will be, as always, in the resource guide, so you can check it out there. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's right below. But Kim, just for me personally, this has been amazing. I really... I've been with a lot of coaches, and I've spoken to a lot of coaches. You're very on point. Your listening is incredibly clear, and your wisdom just comes from experience, not books. which is very, very profound. And I had a great time. I learned a lot from you. So really, for me and for all the listeners, thank you.
Thank you. I had a great time with you, and I definitely hope our paths continue to cross. I mean, now that we've met and shared our most personal and private thoughts and secrets, there's no way that we don't continue in some form of friendship, relationship, business partnership, anything. It would be
absolutely, wonderful. Absolutely. Have an amazing rest of your week, and we will talk very, very soon.
Perfect. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, everyone. So like I said, this is part 1, and this was actually part 2. So I hope you enjoyed this insights with Kim that we've shared. In a couple of days, we'll be releasing part 2, which is really what I'm very curious to see how people will react to. So make sure you check out Kim. I highly recommend you check out this assessment. Get that first coaching call done. Journaling and having a coach actually look at your journaling and give you feedback on it is incredibly, incredibly powerful. So take her up on that offer, and then make sure to come back for part 2, where you hear us really go deep into some incredible, incredible topics. So see you soon, and have an amazing, amazing day.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Performance Enhancing Podcast. We've taken this pep talk and created a custom action guide so you know exactly what action steps to take now to grow your business. Just head over to SatoriPrime.com/podcast and download it for free. Also, please leave a comment and rate this podcast on iTunes. It'll help us get the word out. Thanks for listening. Now, go and implement. We'll see you next time.
Did you run through doors till you hit the floor?